Hello, welcome back to our third week of Bible study. Last week we looked at what God used for creation, at least what I think God used for creation, and He used His power in the form of energy, of course, and He used atoms, or the elements that come from atoms, to create all things. I'd like to carry that on just a little bit further and look at the miracles in the Bible. To me, the miracles are totally believable in the Bible. When you have total control of energy and atoms, or the elements from atoms. If you look at Christ walking on the water, for example, if you have total control of energy, walking on the water would be a simple act to do. And you remember the time that the disciples were in a boat and Christ was sleeping in the boat. A storm came up and they were concerned with being capsized. They woke up Jesus Christ and he calmed the wind. And they said, "What manner of man is this that can control the winds?" Well, with total control of energy, controlling the wind and the weather would not be that big a problem. If you had total control of energy and atoms or elements, curing every sickness and disease in the Bible would be totally believable. If you had control of the elements, turning water into wine would be child's play for God. Just add a few elements to that water, and you'd have the finest wine you could drink. With total control of energy, parting the Red Sea and keeping it apart while a nation of people walked through it would be to us a total miracle, but to God, just another day at the office. Feeding 5,000 people with a few loaves of bread and a couple fish, if you just added those same elements to them and you multiplied that bread and fish, you could feed 5,000 people and have food left over. So with God using this power in the form of energy and elements, to me, the miracles in the Bible, although total miracles, were completely believable. Okay, I think that's enough on that. Let's move on and get a little ways into Genesis here. So let's go with Genesis 1:1 again and just read that. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless, empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So the earth was dark at this time, and it was covered with water. It was flooded. And why it was flooded, I don't know. It doesn't say why it was flooded. It just says that it was flooded. And if we read a little further on here, let's go on a little further, and we'll see that there was no dry ground at that time. It had to appear later. So if we go to verse 6 and read from there. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. And verse 9, and God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered water he called seas, and God saw that it was good. So God made an expanse here. He removed part of this water. I don't know how much. It doesn't say how much he removed, but he removed enough that dry ground could appear. And he put it up into the atmosphere in the form of water vapor. So the whole earth at that time was covered with or surrounded by a water vapor canopy. What this did, of course, was it made the temperature of the earth a constant tropical temperature at all times. It also gave the earth a greenhouse effect, and so that plants and animals, or plants at least, could multiply at a very fast rate. It also increased the it also increased the air pressure of the earth, which answered at least one question with the flying dinosaurs. Science has a problem with flying dinosaurs, and said they couldn't fly because there wasn't enough air pressure for them to. They would have had to have gotten onto a cliff and jumped off to be able to fly. They couldn't get airborne. But if the air pressure was more, it was probably 2 or 3. Henry Morris tells it. I'm sorry I didn't look it up how much more the air pressure was at that time. But with added air pressure, just a couple of flaps of the wings, and they would be airborne. Another thing that would happen with more air pressure is that people would live longer. And of course, with no genetic problems at that time, people did live a long time. This water canopy would diffuse the harmful rays of the sun. We wouldn't have all the ultraviolet harmful rays that we have now. So I think that's enough on that. Let's move on. One more thing about that. There was no rain at that time, and we'll look at that in chapter 2. It says that there was no rain, that the plants were watered from beneath, from streams, from the earth beneath. And one more thing, that canopy is not there now. So what happened to that canopy? Well, we'll find out what happened to that canopy when we get to chapter 6. And as you know, it rained then for 40 days and 40 nights, and that's what happened to the canopy. It came back to this earth, and it flooded this earth again for the second time. It started out being flooded, then again in chapter 6, at Noah's flood, it was flooded again. Now, of course, that canopy is not there now, so a fair question would be, where is that excess water today? Well, the answer to that is it is frozen at the North and South Poles to let the dry ground appear again for Noah and the people that would live on the earth after Noah's flood. Okay, let's move on to let's just start at verse 11. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. And the land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kind, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. So God created here the plants, all the trees on the earth. And of course, with that greenhouse effect, they multiplied very, very quickly and spread across the earth. Let's move on, and then there was lights in the expanse of the sky to separate day from night, and let them serve as signs, mark seasons and days and years, and let them be the lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky and gave light on the earth to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the fourth day. And so God now put the sun, the moon, and the stars up in the sky to give us light, to give us 24-hour days, to give us seasons, and so forth. Verse 20. And God said, let the waters teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living and moving thing with which the waters teemed, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful, increase in numbers, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. We see here 24-hour days, morning. There was evening and morning. We see 24-hour days. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. Could God have created in 24-hour days? And some people say, well, the Bible says a day is like 1,000 years in the eyes of God. Well, I believe they were 24-hour days because it says evening and there was morning. And if you had the kind of control of power and the elements and the superior mind of God, creating these plants in one day would not have been a problem. Yeah, creating the fish and the birds in one day would not have been a problem. He didn't create birds to fill the whole earth at that time. He just created a few of them. And then it says, he said to let them multiply and increase. So they did the multiplying and increasing. He just put a few of them on the earth. And with doing that, creation in a 24-hour period of time, to me, is totally believable. And then there's another thing that he repeats over and over here in these first verses of Genesis, and it says, after their own kind. When he creates them, they're after their own kind. Let's continue on, and we'll hear some of that in this next. Let's go to verse 24. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kind. Livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. So all these animals were made according to their kind, which is the first hint here that evolution had nothing to do with creation. God made these things according to their kind. Now, God didn't create all the different breeds of, I don't know how many breeds of dogs there are. There's a lot of them. God didn't create all of those breeds. He just created some dogs, and they in breeding created different breeds. God just created horses, and he didn't just make quarter horses and thoroughbreds and all the different kind of horses. He just made horses, and through breeding came all the different kinds of horses. But they're still horses. Dogs are still dogs, no matter what their breed is, and cats are still cats. So they're made according to their kind. They have never changed from that since creation. Okay, according to their kind. Where did I end up? I think it was verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all creatures that move along the ground. Now God said, in all other creation up till now, it was according to their kind. Now, when he gets to man, God says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, not in our kind, in God's kind. Let's look at let us first. Let us make man. And again, we have the plural God, us. So all three were involved in the creation in one way or another. And they said, let us make man in our image. Well, what is the image of God? We know God is invisible, so our bodies are not in the image of God. It is the invisible things that are made in the image of God. God has a mind, God has a will, and God has emotions. All those things are invisible. God put a mind, a will, and emotion in all of us. God is a spirit. God put a spirit and a soul in us. Both of those things are invisible. And so those are the images, things that are in the image of God that we have. The body that he gave us is just a place to put those things, a place for us to live in while we're here on earth. And we will take those invisible things with us when we leave this earth. Okay. My time is about up. I think I will stop there for today, and next week we will get into, well, I can go a little bit further here. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created him. Male and female, he created them. And next week, we're going to probably look at that. I don't know yet, haven't decided, but we'll look at that at some point anyway. So let's come to a conclusion for today, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.